Hey everyone, welcome to the UFO Hub livestream. Today's guest and also one of the Ozark Mountain UFO Conference speakers this year is going to be Thomas Fusco. And you will be able to actually see Thomas Fusco and many of the other speakers in person. As far as I know, everything is still on track for in-person, no restrictions conference, so I'm hoping you'll be able to join us. It's April 8th till 10th in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And you can buy the tickets actually right now. They're available on the website. The link, it's in the description below. And you should be able to just simply scroll down, click on the link, and you'll see the different ticket availability. You can also stream it live. That's also an option for those that still don't want to, I guess, get out of the house. But anyway, we have in the description, also in the description below, I have Thomas's website where you can find out more information about him, read additional information that he has on this site, and contact him there as well for any follow-up questions you might have. Amazon links and Barnes & Noble links for his book, Beyond the Cosmic Veil, is also in the description. So as always, with every guest, I have those available. I hope you certainly take advantage of that. So what I've been doing, and up until March 9th, every single video that I come out with weekly, or however many there happen to be per week, leading all the way up till March 9th, if you comment and like the video, and in the description, along with your comment, put a hashtag Ozark 2022 in the comments. Later on, I will be then randomly selecting a winner to win a pair of tickets for the Ozark Conference. So it's simply 2 tickets for you and a friend or whoever else you would like to take with you, if you're interested. If you are not sure that you might win, if you don't want to take any chances, usually not lucky in those kind of things, you can just go straight to the site and purchase them today. So for any questions in the chat, whether it's on YouTube or on Twitch, if you simply put 3 asterisks before the question, that will pop out at me, and I know it's meant for the guest. You can also join the group, which is on Telegram. It's a voice chat group that's going on right now, and it's transmitting voice only, so you can listen to this audio only. And you will be able to join that group. Simply raise your hand. You'll see a little icon that looks like a person raising their hand, and that would add you to my queue. And then come Q&A time, you will be able to ask Thomas a question directly. So with that out of the way, I'm hoping that Seeking Truth 100%, just real quick, it's hashtag Ozark 2022, all lowercase, because I'm be using a program that picks that up. So if you don't exactly spell it out, it might not pick you up there. Also, in the description, the hashtag is spelled exactly the way I will be searching for, so you can just copy that and paste it. So let me unmute Thomas, and let me bring him in. Thomas, welcome. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm glad we're able to do this again. I know we did one interview together quite some time ago, and I also included that in the description below for the first part. And I wasn't sure exactly what to call this, so I was like, why not Behind the Cosmic Veil Part 2? And so I figured we'll just take off from here then. Maybe for those new listeners, if you can go a little bit into your background information, how everything got started for you, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. And first, I just want to let your audience know that the lack of a video feed on me is on my end. So I can't see any of the chat room questions or anything
I'll
like
relay
that.
them to you. I'll only pick the nice ones.
For a good time, call Tom, right?
Right.
Oh my.
All right, I'll leave you be.
Anyway, a very long time ago, late teens, early 20s, I had several to me, were profound parapsychological experiences. Some people like to call them psychic experiences, and that's fine. For me, that term carries a little bit too much preconceived baggage with it. Um, but I had several experiences that caused me to seriously call into question the model of reality that was taught to me in school. And I didn't have any inclination to go into uh, what you might call the experiential path, which is to try to, well, gee, I want to experience these things more and more. Or the practitioner path, I say maybe I can learn how to be a psychic reader or something like that. Those kinds of things never entered my mind. But what I was curious about is how can these things take place? Um, since the model of the universe I learned doesn't accommodate it, uh, I came to an understanding that there was something either missing or incorrect about how we understand physical reality. Uh, the universe is a system, and the system has a set of laws and principles. And everything that is observable and occurs within that system has to follow the laws and principles that govern the system in which they take place. So for me, the question became uh, what model of reality would allow for paranormal and supernatural phenomena in a way that our current model doesn't, and yet still be able to accommodate and include the findings of physics, the findings of modern science, as well as the observations of paranormal and supernatural phenomena. And so that began a decades-long uh, um, search for a system that will do that, that will accommodate all these things under one roof. And eventually I came up with the name for it. It's the theory of supergeometry. And when I felt that I had done a sufficient job with it in order to pull the trigger and publish it, which at some point, no matter what you're working on, you have to reach a point where you pull a trigger and send it out. So I published my work in 2011, and it is in the book Behind the Cosmic Veil. And that's essentially the background.
So, Thomas, let me ask you this. It's so usually there's the mainstream of I don't even know what exactly the mainstream science is, but has anyone approached you and maybe to ask your advice on something that they're working on now, on how can they do it differently, or is this just something so much out of their realm that they're not even going to bother?
Well, the latter is mostly uh, what's going on. Excuse me. Um, in other words, in what I call the alternative thought genre, uh, which includes ufology and paranormal phenomena and all those kinds of things. Um, the vast majority of the people who are involved in those genres, in those fields, are in those fields and are engaged in those fields for their own reasons. They don't, uh, those reasons do not include understanding real science behind whatever it is that they're interested in. Because real science is hard. It's not only hard to do, It's also hard to present. Uh, and quite honestly, sometimes, Adnan, it's also hard on the brain. It's not easy. So people are very uncomfortable with it. There have been a few people, though, who have taken leads from my work. There's a fella over in England, a researcher, who actually built paranormal testing equipment based on my theories to prove certain aspects of it. Anytime there is one of the hallmarks of a scientific theory uh, is that it makes predictions. Not like predictions like the world is going to end tomorrow or something like that, but the kind of predictions that would say, well, one of the predictions my theory makes, for example, is that if it is correct, uh, then one of the predictions that it makes is that the further we go back in time, which can be observed by telescopes, further out they look, the further back in time they're viewing events in the universe, uh, the proportion to gravitational lensing to visible mass will decrease the further back in time we go. And see, already people are like, "Oh my God, what's he saying?" Oh, uh, and forgive me, but that's just an example of a prediction. Uh, Another prediction that the theory makes is that at the emergence of a paranormal event, uh, there would also be an emergence of a slightly different gravitational field that would be distinct from the gravitational field of the Earth. And this is one of the things that this person has been building this device to test. Uh, so that's just a couple of a few examples.
Um, so regarding, so let's say, especially like what you were saying, that this person was using your examples to, build this device for paranormal use, or for basically, would it be a demeaning word to say for ghost hunting?
Uh, would it be specifically for ghost hunting, you're asking?
Or would it, no, what I meant, like, would it be demeaning to say that it's ghost hunting? Because, we always want to use some, because ghost hunting
Oh,
nowadays is always kind of looked at as a joke. That's why I'm asking you before I use the word, but then again, I just used it anyway.
I understand what you're saying.
Well, the reason, just
Yeah,
real quick, the reason why I was asking is that, for example, just recently I was watching something with Demi Lovato, and she has some kind of Geiger counter that blinks if there's, I think it's electromagnetic fields, and she's asking questions, and the whole thing was just basically made a whole joke of, not necessarily that they were, but when you're observing this, it's like they're making it look silly, when this could seriously be researched, with some well built equipment and openness to certain understandings regarding our universe. So
yeah,
what I'm saying is that these different devices, can they be built to the sense of using your theory to really give the mainstream science a run for the money, to where they start looking at it to where, oh, maybe this is something we should consider, or will they
yeah,
still just scoff at it?
yeah. Well, I don't think anyone scoffs at it. I think they just shrug their shoulders and scratch their heads. They're not quite sure what to do with it, because really, what I work, what I've worked on, uh, has accepted the body of paranormal observations as valid observations in the physical universe. In other words, I'm not out there trying to prove the existence of ghosts. I mean, they talked about them as far back as in the Bible. Um, I am working under the premise that I accept the paranormal effect as real. So the question is not ghost hunting. Uh, and one of the things I talk about with that, Adnan, is the idea that uh, many people in the paranormal community, they want to experience it, and they want to. A lot of them want to talk to dead Aunt Mary.
Mhm.
You know, not understanding that dead Aunt Mary never told anybody anything of any significance anyway. Uh, None of these so-called ghosts or spooks or spirits or whatever you want to call them has ever revealed anything, earth-shattering about, the nature of reality or even the realm that they live in. Uh, but it's just the idea uh, of talking to dead Aunt Mary, finding dead Aunt Mary. And I think everybody understands the metaphor that I'm using. Um, so, what they're trying to do is, from an investigative point of view, is what we would call, like, say, in a police department, we would call it the criminology unit, where they're concerned about the criminal, the perpetrator, who's doing it, you know, why are they doing it, all those kinds of questions that have to do with the perpetrator. My field is in the forensics. Let somebody else worry about the motivations of why these people are these ghosts or what they are or what they're talking about or all those kinds of things. There's a million people that have been involved over decades, even centuries, in that question. I want to know the nature of, let's say, if it's a murder, and the perpetrator uses a gun. I want to learn about the gun. I want to know exactly what that gun is, how it works, how it causes the effect of killing someone, so to speak. I'm in the forensics. I want to look at the physical evidence. And I want to look at that evidence to tell me something about physical reality in which those events are operating. That's a very, very, you know, to coin a word from ufology, it's very alien to these fields. Uh, they don't think about that. It's too hard. It's too hard to set up experiments in order to even figure out what's going on. I guess one of the researchers some years back in the paranormal field that made a lot of progress with that was David Roundtree. And I know he became quite a controversial figure, but he actually recorded the kind of data at the sites of paranormal activity that my theoretical model would predict. One of the things, for example, was that the model predicts that EVPs were electromagnetic in nature and that they would actually be able to be recorded inside of a vacuum because they were not being propagated acoustically, they were being propagated electromagnetically. And that's just one example of an experiment that actually proved the predictions of the field of the theory. So I hope that kind of answers what you were asking.
Well, it does, and now it brings me to the next question. So, can you maybe speak a little bit on what is your take on this? Is this actually another consciousness trying to communicate in some way, and we're just trying to record it, or is it like another property of existence? I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I think that what you're asking is natural to think of it that way. And when you're talking about a consciousness or entities trying to communicate or whatever, this is the normal thinking. And I don't mean about the specifics. What I mean is what you're actually asking about is the criminology. Who done it? Who is it that done it? Why did they do it? Uh, so it's a very common way of looking at it. Me, I've kind of stood back from that and say, look, I don't, I'm not going to address the fact of who might be involved, whether these consciousnesses or personalities or whatever you call them, spirits, whatever, uh, who they are. Uh, there's a lot of Christians. The Christian community thinks that it's demonic. No, I don't argue with that. Um, but what I want to focus on in my theory is what is often disregarded, both the paranormal and the ufology. And by the way, Adnan, we ought to inform your audiences that uh, the reason why I'm talking about paranormal phenomena on a UFO conference or stage, so to speak, or like tonight, is that I believe that there is a very, very strong connection between paranormal phenomena and ufology, much stronger than what's normally thought about. Um, but anyway, to get back to the gist of the question, Adnan, my study is focused to a large extent on information. Now, by information, I'm talking about the physics understanding of information, not the common colloquially understanding of it. Um, Oftentimes, science will use the same words that we use in common language, but they'll mean something very different, or something significantly different than how it's used in common language. Information is one of these things. Uh, Information, from a scientific point of view, is basically how would you say it? The blueprint, the formula from which matter and energy, or mass and energy, is assembled. We have today, everybody remembers in school being taught, matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Uh, and that's derived from the equivalency formula of Albert Einstein, E equals mc squared. Uh, but over the last several decades, we've also developed uh, a a principle, a law, that the information from which mass and energy is assembled itself can neither be created nor destroyed. Uh, One of the problems that they have with the everybody's heard of Stephen Hawking, with the Hawking model of black holes, is that according to the Hawking model of black holes, information is destroyed when it enters into a black hole. And that violates the laws and principles of what we currently understand, except about the physical universe. Uh, so when we're talking about something that, uh, Some entity that's trying to communicate to us via whatever, whether it's, in a audible voice or electromagnetic voice or whatever it is. My focus is this: that verbalization, whatever it is, Adnan, comprises information. It is made from information. Just like we can have a computer hard drive and open up a file, and that digital information, let's say it's a song that you want to play, and that digital information on your hard drive is converted by your computer to an analog sound wave, where you hear with your analog ears the music that was recorded in a file. But that music exists in a form of information. Everything in reality, everything in physical reality is uh, is a representation of information. And this is the thing that paranormal field almost completely ignores. They don't even think about that. They think about who's talking. Oh, wait a minute. How did that speech materialize in the physical world from information? They're not thinking about the information. Um, Ufology, even although to a greater extent they do consider information a little bit more, uh, they still don't judge the importance of it. So I'm not so much concerned if there's an entity that is trying to communicate into our physical world. I'm concerned with what that collection of information that contains that communication, how that is brought forth into our physical world and emerges as something analog once it materializes in the physical world. That is the key to understanding paranormal phenomena. And that's the kind of research that I've worked on, and the kind of ideas and concepts that my theory deals with.
Thomas, does that also mean that there's information out there that we would not recognize, or anything that we can, I guess, observe? That it's probably just happening right now, but because of we only know analog, and even then we only know certain patterns, for us to say, okay, this is something I can recognize, or would it just be white noise?
Well, that's a good question. Um, in order to uh, try to determine any body of data, body of information, collection of information, whatever you want to call it, from a physical point of view, we must first be able to make a physical observation. If we cannot make a physical observation, then there really is no way that we can determine what collection of information would be manifesting that observation. So, yeah, um, let's say a space time, it's a very, very difficult thing to measure, uh, the actual substance of it. Einstein taught us that space time is a substantive field. That word is very important, as opposed to the old physics of Isaac Newton that said space was an empty void, it was a nothingness. It, the space itself consisted of nothing. Uh, Space was occupied by matter that moved through time. And that was the Newtonian model. Einstein said that space time is no, it's actually a substantive field, it's actually a physical substance. Uh, but it's something that we cannot directly observe. All that we can observe is the effect. Uh, so, for example, we know that space time is curved around all bodies, especially like big ones like planets and stars. We know that space time bends around it. Um, we are able to mathematically compute what those bends are, which is how we launch satellites into space, which is how we launched Apollo. When we had Apollo orbit the Earth several times and then used a slingshot effect, slinging off the curved face of space surrounding the Earth to get it to propel towards the moon. Uh, so no, we can't directly observe all materializations of information. Uh, so we have to assume that there's information out there that we simply cannot observe, um, just like dark matter. We can't observe it. It's actually a hypothetical substance. A lot of physicists like to talk to the general public as if dark matter is a foregone conclusion. But one of the dirty little secrets is that nobody knows what dark matter is. Nobody has been able to demonstrate the existence of dark matter. Every kind of an experiment that was designed to detect dark matter has come up empty. We don't even know what it is. All we know is that when we make observations, there's about 85 to 90% more gravitational effect that we can observe than there is visible mass to explain it. The conventional, feeling being, gravity is generated by mass. So if we observe, X amount of gravitational effect, we need to observe a proportionate matter or an proportionate amount of visible matter to account for the gravitational effect. Unfortunately, invisible matter, we're about 90% short of what we observe. Um, so there's an effect for which we don't have any, in conventional physics, any a ready explanation for what information might be actually causing that. You folks, you have to forgive me, but it's my work is not common knowledge, and the areas that my work touches on are not common knowledge. So you'll have to forgive me that when I'm asked a question, sometimes it's going to take a few minutes for me to give the background so that the answer that I'm giving even makes sense. You follow me, Adnan?
Yes, I do. Well, Thomas, earlier you alluded to a strong connection between the paranormal and UFOs. Could you maybe please go a little bit into that?
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because that's really you know why I'm speaking at a UFO conference.
Well, just to clarify too, this conference, just because it's a UFO conference, I mean, covering a wide variety of subjects, so it's not a just a strictly UFO all the time. The majority of speakers are, but it's not uncommon to hear people speak on different subjects.
That's great. And yeah, I know that oh, what's the name of your publisher again?
Ozark Mountain Publishing.
That's it. Yeah, they publish a variety of works under what I call the alternative thought genre. So you're right. Yeah, it's quite a broad coverage,
Right.
broad base. All right, let's talk about paranormal phenomena for a minute. Uh, one of the premises of my theory is that all paranormal phenomena are the result of the same kind of physical mechanisms underlying what I call paranormal mechanics, underlying these phenomena. In other words, Adnan, when you look into paranormal phenomena and what is observed at paranormally active sites, you get what I call sort of a catalog. In other words, you have different phenomena. You have mysterious sounds, disembodied voices, things that move by themselves. People feel breezes where there's no doors and windows open. People see visible phenomena manifesting. They have been able to detect heat signatures, and they've also been able to detect and feel cold spots. Uh, Disembodied voices, uh, electromagnetic phenomena, EVPs, and so on. If you kept listing all the things, Adnan, that are observed at paranormally active sites, you would eventually get a catalog of all these phenomena. Uh, and one of the premises that my theory puts forth is that all these phenomena must be occurring according to the same underlying mechanics that we poorly understand right now. Uh, Mechanics being used once again, folks. It's something that gets hijacked by science and used. The word mechanics is used by science in its own way, not in a normal way, like your mechanic under the hood of your car. Uh, like when we talk about quantum phenomena and how it works, we talk about quantum mechanics. So that's what I mean. There's an underlying set of paranormal mechanics that are responsible for all of these phenomena. Now, how does that relate to UFOs? Well, let's take a look at UFO phenomena and see if we can find some relationships. Number one, we know one real quick, that things move according to no visible means of propulsion. That happens in both ufology and paranormal phenomena. We find a relationship that in close proximity to UFO manifestations, electronic equipment malfunctions. I mean, that's pretty classic for ufology, isn't it, Adnan?
Yeah, battery drainage, which is almost similar to what people doing paranormal stuff have reported as well.
Yeah. Now, here's the deal. Let's say your car doesn't start when the UFO's overhead or something like that. Here's where I talk about the paranormal field making big mistakes when they're focusing always on the perpetrator. Who done it? Who done it? So in the paranormal field, they mistakenly have concluded that it is a spirit that is draining power from their electrical equipment to manifest. We don't have that problem in ufology. No one believes that the UFO is draining electricity from your car battery in order for it to manifest. So there's an example right there where the criminology or the perpetrator focusing on that creates a mental block, almost like a rational disorder because you're focused on the wrong things. It's like thinking about, Zeus is responsible for hurling lightning bolts from the sky. Uh, you get into some incorrect assumptions. But anyway, that's one connection. The electromagnetic phenomena, the fact that UFOs can travel without any means of propulsion, just like things move around at paranormally active sites. Doors open and close, things fly across a room with no visible means of propulsion. Uh, let's see, what's another connection? There's a bunch of them. The Another thing that takes place. Uh, oh, let me think about it for a second. I'm temporarily drawing a blank.
Well, I don't want to distract your thought process, but what about there's actually a question somebody asked me not that long ago. From your perspective regarding two observers seeing two separate things, to where one would, let's say, see a ball of light and the other one would just see more of a weird cloud. Um, do you have any thoughts or explanation regarding that?
Yeah, I do. And one of the oh, I remembered another thing with the ufology, but I'll
Sure.
address that question. Is One of the things that UFOs do is they appear and disappear spontaneously. They just seem to disappear sometimes and then appear out of nowhere. Well, isn't that what, like an apparition does?
Right.
Yeah, we have these same kinds of sets of mechanics. Uh, the idea of two observers observing something different from different angles has to do with what I talk about is the way that space time is opened up in a materialization of information. Uh, the structure in space time that occurs when information is materializing into the physical very much resembles what is called in physics an Einstein-Rosen bridge, the mouth of an Einstein-Rosen bridge, colloquially, scientifically, or in filmography or common language, it's called wormholes. Wormholes are not really a scientific terminology. It's used, the term is used for common language for an Einstein-Rosen bridge. So if we have such a tunnel that's opening up in space-time and something is materializing in the mouth of this, you can easily understand why an observer standing at point A would observe something different than an observer at point B, because they're looking at that mouth from different angles. And since the materialization is still inside the mouth, it's going to depend on what angle they're viewing that warped bubble of space-time, uh, which will result in what they see from a particular position. If that was a good explanation today.
Yeah, no, I understand. It makes sense. What
Okay.
was the other thing you wanted to cover that you remembered?
Oh yeah, the other thing I was talking about is that things disappear. They appear and disappear in paranormal effects, just like they do in ufology. The relationship that I was trying to say is this, uh, and it's severalfold. Number one, we assume that there is a set of physical principles. There's a set of what I call paranormal mechanics that are behind paranormal phenomena that we don't understand. If we were able to break that secret, crack that open, what I call cracking the code of creation, really, and understand how those principles work, and we're able to build technology based on it, Adnan, we would be able to build vehicles that do every single thing that UFOs do.
Hmm.
Now, here's the other step of that. UFOs are remote. In other words, they occur up in the air, they occur at distances, they occur on a scale that is larger than the human scale. But paranormal phenomena occurs locally. It occurs very close to human beings. And the manifestations are small enough, not like a 150-foot UFO, 1,000 feet in the air or whatever, but the manifestations of paranormal phenomena are small enough that they can actually be observed and measured on a human scale. So I propose that the answer to figuring out the physics of UFOs is going to ultimately be the study of paranormal phenomena, because we can study it. It's up close, it's local. You have a haunted house where, let's say, you have activity in a couple of human scale rooms. Not like a pattern of 75 feet wide UFOs flying over a mountain half a mile away. You follow what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we can crack the code of paranormal mechanics and devise technology based on it, which I talk about in my book some, uh, we would be able to build devices and vehicles that do every single thing that we observe UFOs doing today.
Okay. Well, Thomas, what do you think if we go into some question and answers? I have one question for you, and then that will give enough time for other questions to come in. What do you say?
Oh, that sounds great.
Okay.
I love it.
So, those of you watching, I know earlier there was got the name. Spaceman Oust was in Telegram. If you can jump back on, I'll take a call over there. And for those that do not wish to talk to Thomas directly, which I don't know why, you can simply submit your question or in chat. Please make sure to use the 3 asterisks before the question before you submit it to the chat. So,
Yeah, I have to tell them I don't think there's anything that you could ask that's so weird as the questions that I got when I was on Coast to Coast AM. Them guys are really out there.
hey, it's a lot larger audience too, and yeah, I can only imagine. I'm sorry I didn't listen to it, but that would be quite a trip. So, wanted to ask you just to use your analogy regarding forensics and looking at the mechanics of something happening. That information, that set of data, is it only coming from one space, I guess, for lack of a better word, or can it also exist on multiple levels coming to us? So, say from like different universes.
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, I'm not a fan of the multiverse.
Okay.
I consider the multiverse a form of kicking the can down the road.
Hmm.
In other words, if we cannot find the physical cause within our own universe for an observed effect, we just simply step alongside and borrow it from another universe without trying to explain how can that be occurring in another universe as well. uh, to put it very simply. Um, and in the best way that I've come over the years to try to explain this, to answer what your question is to actually talk about the Big Bang. I'm going to say something, the beginning of the universe. And I'm going to say something that is very odd, and it's one of the revolutionary aspects of my work, is that I believe that paranormal mechanics, paranormal phenomena, and ufology, the things that we observe UFOs doing that defy our known laws of physics, are actually working on the very same principles that brought the universe into the beginning into being. Now that's pretty, that's pretty out there. Uh, but when you stop and think about the basics, it makes a lot of sense. The uh, uh, the most important thing is this: is that the universe, according to the Big Bang theory, emerged from a nothingness in terms of no thing. Before the beginning of the universe, there was no thing. There was nothing. And then suddenly there was something. That something is supposed to have been emerging from what they call a quantum singularity, which they call infinitely dense and infinitely small. The word infinite is a clue. It is immeasurable. Anything that is physical and dimensional, by its very definition, is measurable. If something is immeasurable, in other words, there isn't a multiplicity of coordinates, whereas everything physical has three spatial coordinates, length, width, and depth. And then it has a temporal coordinate for time. So everything that is physical has four dimensions, and it needs each one of those dimensions to define anything that is physical. The meaning of a singularity is that there is only a single coordinate. In school they told you about a line in geometry. It's made of an infinite number of points. But what if there was only a single point? You couldn't draw a line. You need another point that you can draw a line between the two of them. With one point, it is impossible to have a dimensional figure like a line, let alone a square and a cube. So the universe emerged from a single coordinate. So that's one thing. The next thing is this: when the universe emerged, it materialized with a form and a structure. The first thing that emerged was a bubble of space-time. Space-time has a geometry. Therefore, it means that space-time appeared according to a set of data that described it. It was information that, when it became dimensional, it materialized physically. We talk about the primordial particles. One of them is a neutrino. Everybody's heard about neutrinos. Scientists try to measure them because they believe that they are particles that emerged from the Big Bang. Well, we didn't have, in the early universe, we didn't have a trial and error period where the pre-creational materials tried to assemble in a particle and it didn't work and it broke apart, and then it tried again and broke apart until it finally assembled itself as a neutrino that became the mother neutrino that gave birth to all the other neutrinos in the universe. No, didn't happen that way. Neutrinos began to materialize everywhere in the early universe at the same moment. Now, what does that mean? It means there had to be a pre-material blueprint, a matrix, a pattern, if you will, that contained all the information that would become a neutrino, that when it crossed into the physical and materialized, that body of information materialized as a neutrino, as a photon, so on and so forth. When we talk about paranormal phenomena, we're talking about, let's say, an apparition. I could go through all the different steps to show that it is impossible for the surrounding material, like the walls and the floor. Some people talked about underground streams, all that crazy stuff, that could actually record the information for an apparition and then play it back on demand and then project it into a specific locality in local space, and then actually like be a moving projector to cause it to walk down a hallway or something. Nothing in the physical surroundings can do that. So the information that makes up the apparition must be coming from outside of space-time. And it's materializing within physical space-time. Sometimes these paranormal researchers will send somebody to a library, find out somebody who died maybe in a house 100 years ago, brings the photo in the house, shows it to the homeowners, and they gasp and say, "Oh my goodness, that's the lady we've been seeing in our kitchen. It looks just like her." Well, that photograph is a collection of information that was conveyed on a light wave, a light beam, and recorded on the film of the camera. The source of that information is gone, Adnan. That body rotted away 100 years. It's gone. There is no presence of the information that's in that photograph anywhere in the physical environment, because the source of the information from which the photograph was derived is destroyed. So where does the information come from to materialize the apparition that people are seeing and saying it looks just like the photo that's 100 years old of a body that's long since turned to dust? That means that that information is stored somewhere out of space-time. Now, are there layers of it? Well, by definition, it would be non-physical, which means it would not have a physical dimension. Layers are physical dimensions. And therefore, you cannot have layers in the normal physical sense, and not have mathematical coordinates to define them.
So you mean
What I
by
do,
that definition, it cannot be called a separate universe?
there's no need for a separate universe.
No, I mean, I'm just
Uh,
talking about since you said since layers outside of space and time. What I'm
yes,
saying, okay.
you are correct. According, and I have a drawing of it in my book. According to what we have, I call it the omniverse. And since I published, there were a couple people that borrowed that for their own work. It's kind of funny. But if you've heard it before in other sources, I think I published it first. The omniverse comprises, in my model, of two components, of two basic areas. They're both part of the same reality, but the physical universe is called the universe. The part of reality that gives rise to the physical universe is what I call the patriverse. Pater meaning is it the Greek? No, it's the Roman. Pater is the Roman word for father. So, the Greeks called him Zeus, and the Romans called him Father Zeus, Pater Zeus, or Jupiter. That's where the word Jupiter comes from, Father Zeus. Um, so I call that the Patriverse. What I say is reality actually occurs in the Patriverse, and it is layered only in terms of increasing density. In other words, information has to reach a certain density before it can materialize. And so you have a graduation of from lesser to greater density until it finally reaches light speed, and then it emerges in the physical universe. So it's more like a graduation. I don't see it as layers, if you kind of follow what I mean.
I do. Okay. All right. Well, Tom, let's take some questions. Let me
Please,
let me bring in
somebody help me,
some
please.
other questions other than mine.
No, no,
Spaceman
I
now.
don't mean. It's the complexity of the information. It's so different than what people are used to imagining,
Right.
that it just, although when I talk to someone who's scientifically trained, they generally understand it. One of the symposium, I spoke with a woman who had a degree in astrophysics, and after about 20 minutes of her jaw hanging on the floor, she said, "You've just reconfigured my entire education."
Mm.
She says, "Because you didn't have the courses, you don't even know the mysteries that you're answering with this theory." Um, but, for the general public, it's very hard. It's very difficult. But go ahead, Adnan. I'm sorry.
No, no, that's all right. So, Spaceman Oust, I'm going to unmute you. Please make sure that you're any kind of feedback you have, if you're listening to this live, put that on mute, please, just so it doesn't feed back into our stream. So you are unmuted on my end. Unmute yourself and yours, and please ask your question.
Yeah, how you going, everyone? I was just wondering if you knew about the science when they first looked at the surface of the atom. They made like the electron microscope, and they sort of put the magnetic field as close to the surface of the atom, and they could receive back an image of the surface. Are you aware of that science that they did? I'm just curious because what ended up happening when they were demonstrating it to showing you that they were able to look at the surface of the atom, what looked like a fuzzy ball from a distance, but as they got in closer, they realized that the atom was made up of millions of other fuzzy little balls that were all stuck together. And when they got close to the surface to show you that, what ended up happening was the image that came back on the monitor was actually just like a big white blurry dot that took up the whole screen. So they panned out, and what they ended up seeing was that they'd pulled the part of the atom off the surface, and it was stuck to the tip of the needle that was producing the magnetic field. And they realized that they were able to actually pull the atom apart piece by piece. So they then replicated that experiment, but at a smaller scale, where they could actually look at the surface of that piece they took off the atom, because it looked identical to the actual original atom. So they wanted then to look at the surface of it. And when they made the scaled it down and got to look at the surface of that particle they pulled off, what image they ended up getting was actually like they were looking out at the universe. It was like they were looking into the galaxy, into a galaxy sort of thing, and it just that sort of is what pulled up science effect, stopped the
Spaceman, I'm
project.
sorry to interrupt. Can you just ask a question so that, like, I think you're given enough explanation. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if he's aware of that science that when they looked at that, the surface of the atom, how they ended up, because they were trying to figure out how things were solid, when atoms are hollow and they got electrons and neutrons spinning around, and they were trying to figure out what made objects in our world, solid mass because, the things they were made of were actually hollow, so.
So you
They
want
were
to
trying
ask
to
him if
figure
he's
that
heard of
out.
it? Was there anything specific you wanted him to answer regarding that?
I think
Yeah,
I
just wondering
understand the
if he's
question.
aware of that experiment. Yeah.
Okay. Spaceman, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Go ahead, Tom.
I think I understand the question. And thank you for the question. And if I don't understand it, please forgive me. Some of it was kind of difficult to hear because of the way the audio was a little bit kind of bleeding in and out. But according to my model, and this is one of the other wonderful things about it, according to conventional physics, let's talk about conventional physics for a second. There are two physical states of reality in conventional physics. One of them is the quantum state, and one of them is the relativistic or macro state. The quantum state addresses issues with the way things exist and behave on a very, very small subatomic scale. And the relativistic state deals with the macro universe. The problem that we have in physics and had for some time is that the relativistic state, relativity as in Einstein, the relativistic state is perfect at describing the universe at large. The quantum physics, the quantum state, is perfect for describing what happens in the quantum universe, but we cannot get them to reconcile. We cannot form a continuous theory that includes both the relativistic state and the quantum state. So I think part of the question was, when we look at the nature of the quantum state, the subatomic realm, how does that result in solid physical mass in the relativistic macro state? Adnan, does that sound like the question?
If you heard it better than I did, I'm going to have to trust you that you are answering it. Just proceed. He's going to let us know if not.
All right. The answer to this dichotomy, this unresolvable dichotomy in supergeometry, which is the name of my theory, that's the model that's in the book, is that reality consists of three states, not two. Reality does not consist only of the relativistic state and the quantum state. It also exists in a pre-physical state. That's the third state of reality, or you could call it the non-physical state, just like it was in the beginning of the universe, before the universe began. It's a non-physical state. Now, what happens is that the information in the non-physical state materializes into the relativistic macro state. The quantum state is the transition state between what is not yet physical and what is fully physical. That explains the weirdness of the quantum realm. They cannot, for example, the uncertainty principle cannot measure both the velocity and the location of an electron at the same time. It can only measure one or the other. Can't measure both. According to my theory, the quantum state lacks sufficient dimensionalism in order to follow the rules of the fully materialized universe. It's a transitional state which explains perfectly what I see, or what we see when we look at the quantum realm. Let's say in the uncertainty principle, the problem of not being able to measure both the velocity and the location of an electron at the same time is that it has yet to acquire sufficient dimensionalism. The 4 dimensions of space-time that are necessary to define the macro relativistic materialized universe has not yet been completely unfolded. Therefore, there's not sufficient differences between here and there, which is how I define spatial dimensions. They're measurements of difference between here and there. Nor is there enough time to measure the dimensional or the temporal dimension between then and now. Or if you want to talk about the future, I call that when. So my definition of time is the measurement of difference between then and now. It's almost childlike. And my dimension of space is the definition, or is the difference between here and there, which you need coordinates. When the coordinates are not defined well enough, you cannot take a measurement. Now, the mystery about the quantum universe is that they see it as a standalone state. That here's the quantum realm as a standalone state. Here's the macro realm, the relativistic realm as a standalone state. And they can't get the two to play together. According to the supergeometric model, the quantum state is a transitional state. See, conventional science can't look at it that way because there isn't a third state of reality, by which something can transition from one to the other. In other words, if you have a transition from one state to the other, you need to at least have 3 states. You have to have your starting state, you have to have your finished state, and then you have to have the state in between. So in that state of the quantum realm, which flies around pretty much at the speed of light, there is insufficient dimensionalism to take accurate measures, which is why it behaves the way it is. It is information in the process of materializing. Why it isn't solid like the relativistic universe is that it's still in the process of materializing. It can't be solid, because if it had to be solid like mass, it would have to have 4 dimensions by which to measure it. An example of this is the Einstein model thought experiment about a spaceship traveling at the speed of light, or right below it. Since mass cannot travel at the speed of light, there's a clue right there for you. For mass to travel at the speed of light, and you've probably heard of this before, would require what they call infinite velocity, infinite energy, which is something that can't exist in the physical universe. So we talk about spaceships. Einstein talked about ships or like trains that travel just below the speed of light. If you were looking out a porthole, front windshield of a spaceship traveling just under the speed of light, you would see all the stars that you passed, that you already passed, the stars that you are in process of passing, and the stars that you have yet to pass, all grouped together in the view of the porthole. Past, present, and future would be seen simultaneously. And there's places online you could look that up and see. So what my model says is that at the velocities that the subatomic world operates at, there is insufficient dimensions to discern not only what's behind us, what's next to us, and what's in front of us, but it's also insufficiently materialized to be able to measure the time that we passed the past stars, the time that we are passing the stars on the side of us, and the time that we will encounter the stars that are in front of us. And that's the explanation of why the quantum universe acts the way it does, and why it cannot turn into solid mass, like in the relativistic state, until it's fully materialized.
All right, thank you for that, Thomas. Let me bring Spaceman in just to finish up with him, because he had raised his hands again. And then after that, I'll get to the question from Labeled 369. Spaceman, please make sure to mute any playback you have from any other players. I'd appreciate it. You are unmuted. Unmute yourself on your part. And did Thomas answer your question?
Yeah.
Please speak up a little bit if you can.
I don't understand everything he was saying, but what my question is dark matter in space, is it a vacuum? And when a spaceship opens its door in the air, is it sucked out, or is it actually dark matter, actually pressure? Because Nikola Tesla claimed that light was formed from escaping dark matter, the pressure of dark matter. And, I wonder, is actually the oxygen in a spaceship when the doors open, is it actually pressurized out or is it vacuumed out, because he believed it was like a fluid, dark matter. And they've done an experiment where they got a light bulb, like a traditional light bulb with two elements in it. And they actually had the two elements sharing the negative pole. So when they turned the light on, each element produced its own light. But in between, in the middle of it, there was dark matter. When you zoomed in to look at it closely, you could actually see a thin black line between the two elements of light. So, yeah, I was just curious to know whether he thought space was a vacuum or actually under pressure. And
Thomas, before I mute him, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Spaceman. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, here's what there's a couple of problems with what you're asking. First of all, I'm familiar with what you're talking about with the light bulb experiment. The idea that that is dark matter, what's being observed, is absolutely speculative and hypothetical. To date, and you can look this up online, there has been no experiment that directly resulted in the detection of something that fits the definition of dark matter. So if you've been reading that's dark matter, you've read somebody who has speculated that that's what it might be. That's a problem. The other problem is that, to the best of my recollection, and I would have to do the online research, but I've studied a lot about Tesla. The work of Tesla, the theoretical work of Tesla, predates the theory of dark matter, or I should say the notion of dark matter, because the idea of dark matter being a real part of our universe only came into play when our observational instrumentation that we use to look out in the universe was strong enough to where we could see gravitational lensing in areas of space, bending of space-time, without any adjacent physical visible matter to account for that bending. So it defied the normal model of gravity, which is the bending of space, that space is bent around material objects. Well, in these cases of gravitational lensing, there was no visible matter. So the theory of dark matter came up to explain what this invisible matter might be that's causing this gravitational lensing where no visible matter is there. This predates Tesla, or Tesla, I should say, predates that. Tesla didn't have that that information. My goodness. Let me look real quick, Adnan, and see when Tesla died. Now I'm getting cars. Nikola Tesla. He died in 1943. Now, do you remember in 1943 what they thought the universe was?
I'm not trying to be smart as I wasn't born yet.
The universe they thought was our galaxy. They thought our galaxy, whatever that comprised, was the entirety of the known universe. So I think the caller, I forget his tag name. You've been reading material that is based on speculation, exaggeration, sensationalism, but you won't find any of that idea that identifying, number one, that the observation was actually dark matter, for sure. And number two, that Nikola Tesla had a theory of dark matter. You're not reading good science.
Are you saying that Nikola Tesla was wrong or just didn't have the information that we have later?
Nikola Tesla didn't have a theory of dark matter. During his time, we didn't even have the astronomical observations that would result in anyone trying to formulate a theory of dark matter. We had to look far enough out in space and have accurate enough measurements that we were able to detect gravitational lensing, that we were able to detect and measure the actual speed of motion, not only of our galaxies, but of other galaxies, and come up with the understanding that the way that they rotate and the speed of which they're rotating is far in excess of what could be accounted for by the classical model of gravity. This information wasn't available in Tesla's time.
Okay.
Of course, in some of the other alternative fields, if you ever watched the Ancient Aliens TV show, They say that aliens gave Nikola Tesla everything that he knew. They fed it into his brain or something. I don't know.
Well, they're certainly milking that cow, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of quackery going on out there. A lot
Yeah, I
of
was just
people writing lots of silly things.
I was just talking to my wife, and that was that Discovery or History Channel? Where is that airing?
It might be I know on regular cable TV it's on the History Channel.
Okay, right. I was
Discovery,
just
on the internet, on streaming, might contain it as well. I don't know.
Well, I like the fact that, a person that, just might have some interest will get them to start thinking about UFOs and extraterrestrials and all that. But I don't
Uh-huh.
like the fact that it's based on that. Because, yeah, it's like, I'm not saying, like you said, it's that, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens, and so I watched something else where they have all these theories, and it's like, at this point, until one day they land themselves and prove everything wrong or right. At this point, it's like they turn themselves into what I call the new MTV, where MTV used to do music videos. Now it does nothing but reality shows and some BS. And then you have History Channel. Instead of doing history, they turn themselves into basically like UFO conspiracy stuff.
Yeah. It's all about entertainment. It's all about scintillation.
Yeah, I wish it was done more factually. That's what I'm trying to say.
They
I mean,
can't
I'm not saying that.
that way.
Right.
They
Well, I
can't
mean,
sell cornflakes that way. That's the old saying in the TV business with advertising. A TV show got to sell cornflakes.
right.
They
I
can't
understand
sell
what you mean.
cornflakes with reality. They talk about the city of Baalbek, and they talk about the trilitons, those three giant stones. And you hear them talking about that Baalbek was built on the platform of these stones. It's an absolute lie. The
And,
trilitron stones in the foundation of Baalbek are not a platform.
and this was one of their shows.
Oh yeah, they talk about it. Oh, you can find it online. It's a bunch of lies. You
Right.
know, Baalbek was built by my ancestors, the Romans. I'm Fusco. I'm Italian. You know,
Hmm.
it was
Right.
built by my ancestors in historic times. And every engineer can tell you exactly why they placed the trilitons. Because it was to prevent the city from sliding down the hill. It's the same reason why my ancestors, the Romans in Herod's time, put that giant 600-ton stone in the foundation wall of the second temple in Jerusalem. That was built by my ancestors. They didn't want to talk about that. And in both the instances of Baalbek and in the instance of the temple, they know the quarries where the stones were cut out of. They're nearby. They know where they are. So yeah, if you're listening to Ancient Aliens, oh my goodness, uh, that's why I'm not rich and famous.
Well, maybe you should be. I'll drop your name or something. I don't
Oh
know. I'm
my,
just
for a
kidding. I
good
don't
time
have any
called Bob.
connections.
But it really is very difficult for the general public not only to sort out fact from fantasy, but also to find the general public that actually wants the facts. It's like that old movie that Jack Nicholson was in where he's the military guy and he yells in the courtroom,
I
"You
want the
can't
truth.
handle the
Oh, right.
truth."
Yeah, A Few Good
Yeah,
Men. I love that movie.
yeah. People don't want the truth when they're looking at these shows. They want to be excited. They want to think about that they're learning something that is contrary to the establishment.
Right.
It is based on the philosophy of rebellion.
Okay.
And
Well,
there's a lot of people that are involved in paranormal phenomena because they pursue rebelling against the mainstream. That they could become experts in something with virtually no credentials or education that the rest of humanity is totally ignorant of. They're an expert. Okay, I'm sorry. I ranted.
that's all right. You know, you got to
Please forgive
speak your piece. Just real quick, I don't know if you changed your mic, but you sound just a little bit distant. So the next question is from Labeled369. She's asking, is non-physical state thought?
Depends on where it originates. Okay? And what I mean is this. We know from the scientific information that we have available to us now with our, our measuring equipment, that thoughts exist in the brain in electrochemical forms. So thoughts are things, thoughts are physical. However, when you start talking about parapsychology, let's say remote viewing, now you're talking about something different. Because to make a long story short, there is no physical medium by which information about the color and and a geometry of a 57 Chevy parked on a certain street can be transferred to a mind on the East Coast remote viewing it. It has to travel outside of physical reality. Then, when it drops into the mind, that information, that non physical information, it materializes in the brain as an electrochemical pattern. Wow. So psychic phenomena is also paranormal. In other words, it behaves to the same paranormal mechanics as paranormal phenomena does. It's a materialization of information which occurred at the very beginning of the universe. So that really is something else that's revolutionary about my theory. It allows us to look at things in a new way where all these things are connected. Uh, which, Adnan, is one of the aspects of ufology. People wonder, well, how can these spaceships come from foreign galaxies or other places in the galaxy? There simply isn't sufficient time and space to accommodate those spaceships traveling physically through space. Well, if they have mastered what I call paranormal mechanics, they know how to dematerialize something and then project the information, just like the lady's photo I was talking about earlier. Take the information and project it to a location near our planet with the proper resonant frequency for the coordinate in space, and then drop it back down and rematerialize it. And no more any need to figure out how to build giant engines to bypass space and time. Did that make sense?
Yeah. Well, Thomas, is there any last thoughts you want to leave us with before we finish up today?
Well, I have a lot of them, but
Well, I should say concluding thoughts. I know. I doubt you'll have any last thoughts.
has everybody passed out in the audience yet, or?
Well, no, it's just whoever sometimes they ask questions, sometimes they don't, and today they just seem to be listening.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I've been told that sometimes some of the material I talk about results into uh, um, involuntary fetal positions and thumb sucking. It has a tendency to just shake everything up. Um, but it is, so far to date, the only scientifically meaningful theory that accommodates not only the world of the supernatural and the world of observable physical phenomena, but also spiritual principles. It encompasses it, incorporates it into a singular system um, that not only explains paranormal phenomena, uh, but it also gives an explanation for mysteries in physics like dark matter and dark energy. Dark energy is supposed to be the energy that is continuing to expand the universe in opposition to the gravity that exists in visible matter inside the universe that should be pulling the edges of the universe back in on itself. So they, just like dark matter, they made up an imaginary substance called dark energy. And that's the force that's supposed to be pushing out the outside the universe. Nobody's seen it. Nobody can define it specifically. According to my theory, the universe is still emerging from the Big Bang. In other words, the theory has caused me to be able to make a one sentence statement about the universe that applies to all of it, that the universe is an expression of materialized and materializing information. If the process wasn't still occurring, we wouldn't be able to explain paranormal phenomena. If the process wasn't still occurring, we couldn't explain the gravitational lensing that we see in the emptiness of space without needing a material to explain it. But if the universe is still emerging, then it is still creating the same kind of space-time bubble that occurred at its very beginning, where space and time had a gravitational field without having any material content in it yet. That's another dirty little secret about physics. This is why Einstein pounded his head to try to come up with a structure in space-time that could generate a gravitational field without having the presence of physical matter to bend the space to make the field. That's why he and Dr. Rosen came up with the Einstein-Rosen bridge. It defines a structure in space-time that can have a gravitational field without having adjacent causal mass. And so, if the universe is still emerging from the Big Bang, which I believe it is, there is no reason to invent dark matter, and there's no reason to invent dark energy. Um,
All right. Well,
the
thank you
theory
for.
also, I'm sorry,
Oh,
go ahead. I'm
no,
sorry.
no. I thought you were pause either pause or finish it. So, but please go ahead.
Will this guy please shut up? I gotta go to the can, man.
No, that wasn't it. You paused long enough for me thinking that I need to interject.
Uh, Another thing that it explains is the two slit experiment. And it provides, it provides a solid model for what David Finkelstein, physicist David Finkelstein, called coherent superpositions, which is what I call this super geometric structure that is non-physical but exists above the physical and is part of the physical. David Bohm. These are mainstream physicists. They're not Tsoukalos over on Ancient Aliens, you know. These are mainstream famous physicists. David Bohm called it implicate order that gave rise to the explicate order of the physical universe. If you get into parapsychology and you run into the writings of Edgar Cayce, he called it the Akasha. So there's been many names for it. You know, if you go into Christianity and look at the mystical aspects of it, they call it the Word of God. That the universe was created, when God created the universe, it was a void and formless mass. It was like raw clay. And then he spoke the word. He spoke the order, the information, the structure. Let there be light. And it took the pre-creational clay and materialized it into a definite form that had spatial and temporal dimensions. The theory joins all of these works together, including parapsychology and so anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, Thomas, I'm certainly very happy to be able to see you coming up in April. I know it's been a long time, and this time I'm doing all the interviews like this, and I'll be doing all those ahead of time, so I'm not going to be literally like super busy like I used to be from 6. When I'm at these conferences, I get to about a couple of days ahead of time, you know, with the crew and setting up and all of that. So it's usually from like 6 a.m. till pretty much maybe 10 or 11 is when I'm kind of finally done doing what needs to get done. And that each day, that includes going back to the conference center, messing out with anything. If there's any issues with the audio, video, then go back and do interviews and then finish that up, go back and forth. So anyway, long story short, I'm going to have time. And so I'm really hoping that you and I can catch up because it's been, 8 years so far?
Oh, it's been a while. I haven't counted.
So 14.
I've finally gotten over the pain of the after effects of the last symposium. But that's another story altogether. Yeah. But yeah, and Adnan, according to the UFO conference website, I have been granted the honor of being the very first speaker on the roster.
I don't know. I think somebody had something to do with that. Because, you know, I'm part of the scheduling team too. So if you want to ask me the reason why, I thought I can tell you, I guess, later offline.
No, all right. Well, I'm honored to kick off the program, so that I'll also have lots of spare time to intermingle with the crowd.
Right.
And I'll try not to harm anybody's brain doing it.
Well, so along with myself, most of you that would like to attend, you'll be able to see and at least in the hallways chat up with Thomas a little bit. If you choose to attend the Ozark UFO conference that's coming up April 8th till 10th. As I mentioned in the very beginning, there are no restrictions. And so they've just now really begun to just heavily advertise and just sending out as much information about it because the company has received a lot of calls and a lot of people wanted to come, but it was under the stipulation that there was no restrictions, and that was the intention from the get-go. They were just basically waiting from the hotel to see if they were going to change anything, or if the town of Eureka Springs was going to impose something. And as of right now, it doesn't look like it, and if anything, it's going the opposite way. So as I mentioned also in the very beginning, if you comment in the comment section and like this video, make sure you leave a hashtag Ozark 2022. The exact spelling is in the description as well, so that way come March 9th, I will be randomly selecting a video leading all the way from, I think when I first started about last week, all the way up until 9th, I will be picking a random video and then doing a random selection of whoever had the hashtag in the comment section. So you can win 2 tickets to the Eureka Springs Ozark UFO conference. So in the description also, Thomas's website, link to his books on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Please do check that out as well. So next week, I'm going to have another guest, Nick Pope. He's going to be on next Friday at 7. So basically, I'm hoping to get through all the speakers before the conference actually starts. So Thomas, thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again. And again, thank you for tonight. Everyone else watching, I really appreciate you tuning in. And y'all take care.